Hi, it's Michelle Einstein Songbird Song. This is about St. Francis of Assisi. He was an Italian Catholic friar, deacon, and mystic who is one of the most venerated religious figures in Christianity. Patron saint of animals, merchants, ecology, stowaways, and Italy. Encyclopedia Britannica, St. Francis of Assisi, Vision. At Christmas time in 1223, Francis participated in an important ceremony where he celebrated the birth of Jesus by recreating the manger of Bethlehem at a church in Grecia, Italy. This celebration demonstrated his devotion to the human Jesus, a devotion that would be rewarded in most dramatic fashion in the following year. In the summer of 1224, Francis went to the mountain retreat of Alvernia, not far from Assisi, to celebrate the feast of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary, August 15th, and to prepare for St. Michael's Day, September 29th, by fasting for 40 days. He prayed that he might know. I have to turn the page. That he might know how best to please God. Opening the Gospels for the answer, he came upon, let me say right now, this is St. Francis' reincarnation, Robin Michelle Birdsong. Okay, just while I have the camera on her, and here she's kissing the head of her nephew, Seth Wynne Renzinger, who was also Sami G, the great saint of Agra. Okay. So I'll go on to say that, so he opened a Bible for the answer and he came upon references to the Passion of Christ 3 times. As he prayed during the morning of the feast of the exaltation of the cross, September 14th, he beheld a figure coming toward him from the heavens. Saint Bonaventure, Minister General of the Franciscans from 1257 to 1274, and a leading thinker of the 13th century, wrote, "As it stood above him, St. Francis saw that it was a man, and yet a seraph with 6 wings. His arms were extended and his feet conjoined, and his body was fixed to a cross. 2 wings were raised above his head, 2 were extended as in flight, and 2 covered the whole body. The face was beautiful beyond all earthly beauty, and it smiled gently upon Francis. Conflicting emotions filled his heart, for though the vision brought great joy, the sight of the suffering and crucified figure stirred him to deepest sorrow. Pondering what this vision might mean, Francis finally understood that by God's providence he would be made like to the crucified Christ, not by a body of martyrdom, but by conformity in mind and heart. In other words, his mind and heart was going to be like Jesus, the crucified Christ. Then, as a vision disappeared, it left not only a great ardor of love in the inner man inside Francis, but no less marvelously marked him outwardly with the stigmata of the crucified. In other words, he was at the level of Christ. In other words, St. Francis Robin Michelle Birdsong is at the level of Christ. For the remainder of his life, Francis took the greatest care to hide the stigmata, marks resembling the wounds on the crucified body of Jesus Christ. After the death of Francis, Brother Elias announced the stigmata to the order by a circular letter. Later, Brother Leo, the confessor and intimate companion of the saint, who also left a written testimony of the event, said that in death, Francis seemed like one just taken down from the cross. Francis lived 2 years longer in constant pain and almost totally blind. He had contracted an eye disease while proselytizing in the East in 1219. Medical treatment at Reiter was unsuccessful, and after a stay at Siena, he was brought back to Assisi, where he died at the Organola. He was buried temporarily in the church of San Giorgio of Assisi on July 15, 1228, concluding a process of unprecedented speed. Francis was canonized by his former protector, Pope Gregory IX. On the following day, the Pope said the foundation stone for the Basilia that Brother Elias would build in Francis's memory, and in 1230, the saint's body was transferred to the lower church of the Basilia. Paul Salvatierre, born August 3, 1858, St. Michael D. Crowlebrough, died March 4, 1928, Strasbourg. French historian and educator who is chiefly remembered for his biography of St. Francis of Assisi. St. Francis, like I said, is Robin Michelle Birdsong, who is also Michelangelo incarnated. She incarnated as Galileo. She incarnated as Kepler, the scientist, and as Voltaire, the genius writer, and as Dr. Seuss, and as Queen Victoria, Empress of India. Dr. Wayne Dyer loved St. Francis. He was also Pope St. Linus, successor to St. Peter. Cousin of Mildred Michelle Anderson Birdsong, St. Peter was known as Lieutenant General John Hopper, as General Douglas MacArthur, Peter, father of Muhammad, Dr. Jordan Peterson, Carl Jung. Peter was also the father of Emma Young, Michelle Birdsong, and Prophet Ezekiel, Reverend Jesse Peterson. Dr. Wayne Dyer is reincarnating as Sebastian Everett. His father is Jeff Bezos. His mother is Michelle Birdsong. Okay, I have to turn the page. St. Francis. drwaynedyer.com. Post. Tag St. Francis. Expect a miracle. Dr. Wayne W. Dyer. Spirituality 138 comments. Guru Govinda Singh says spirituality is finding your creator, then figuring out how to show your gratitude to him or her. St. Francis of Assisi is Robin Michelle Birdsong, my Michelle Birdsong daughter. She was Sister Donnie Wright, missionary of the Church of God on Poston Street in Clarksville, Tennessee. My Michelle Anderson Birdsong Minnow, my other mother. How to show my gratitude. Justice for St. Francis of Assisi, now a girl, woman, Robin Michelle. One with God is what Michelle means. Birdsong. Robin studied for her PhD at the University of London at Goldsmiths. Just as it neared the end of her studies, a few more assignments, she, St. Francis, now Robin Birdsong, would receive her doctorate in Jungian psychology. Her mother, Emma Jung, Michelle Birdsong, Sigmund Freud, Laura Pearl's Gestalt Therapy co-founder. Top 10 art universities in the UK: Royal College of Art, University College London, University of the Arts London, Goldsmiths London is the fourth best university, art colleges in the UK. Then what happened? Artistry, creative skill or ability, the artistry of the pianist, the artistry of the clairvoyant, www.theartistme blog art. Who is an artist? Artist definition and meaning, metacult. Art is something that is created. An artist must be someone who creates. An artist is not limited to one medium or activity or skill. Why did St. Francis of Assisi give up his wealth? After a wild youth and a brief career as a soldier, Francis had a conversion experience that inspired him to renounce his family's wealth and devote his life to God, Jesus. Why did St. Francis of Assisi live in poverty? St. Francis of Assisi abandoned a life of luxury for a life devoted to Christianity after reportedly hearing the voice of God, intuition, who commanded him to rebuild the Christian church and live in poverty. What is Franciscan poverty? The Franciscans were authorized by Pope Gregory IX to have non-members who would look after their material needs, while the friars themselves would own nothing and would only make use, according to the vow of poverty, of what was given to them. What are the life-changing lessons you learn from the life of St. Francis of Assisi? Compassion. Without compassion, you lack Christ's love. Allentown Diocese taps little of its $300 million in Lehigh Valley real estate to compensate abuse victims. By Emily Ortho, the morning call, trusted news. St. Francis of Friends of the Poor. Today, we provide affordable, permanent housing coupled with on-site medical, psychiatric, wellness, and social services designed to help our nearly 300 residents. That's what they say. We are a haven for people who have had a lifetime of struggle and isolation. Okay, so St. Francis of the Poor in New York City calls organizations like St. Francis Friends of the Poor. Total revenues $8 million, 52.3% Total expenses. Is that 6,000 or six? I think that's $6 million, 12. So the total assets of St. Francis is $13,905,007.08. Okay, so to make a long story short, Robin has been administering to the poor in Hawaii, and so she found they have rats in the wall, so they sent her a cat, and the cat scratches her. You see how he scratched her? Scratched her like that. And she keeps forgiving the cat because she's St. Francis, a patron saint of animals. So I'm trying to get her a room here at St. Francis in New York City, and they won't give it to her, even though she's St. Francis. Do you see the injustice? That's horrible. That's unreal. And I don't really know how to. I told them who she is. She came here visiting once, and her son nearly bowed to her. He was so awe-stricken by her aura. So the justice I want for St. Francis is that she gets her PhD from the University of London, for which she has worked for and earned, but she ran across a powerful teacher, a black teacher, who was jealous of her because that black teacher got her position because she's black. It was affirmative action. Robin is qualified for a PhD not because she's black, but because she's smart and because she worked very, very hard all these years. So I want St. Francis Robin Birdsong to receive her PhD that she has earned, and that teacher who gave her impossible assignments so she could fail her fired. That's justice on that hand. And then here in the States, I want this place, the deed given to us. Christ told me that he purchased this place for us, the Holy Royal Family of good human beings, for $11 million, which is what this is what he said. So I need the deed so that Robin can have rooms here. If anybody in the world deserves a place to live in New York City, it's St. Francis of Assisi, Robin Birdsong, who has been administering to people in the reptile kingdom, the rural part of Hawaii. She did a video and her fingers were turning green. She's being infected, and she's in. She doesn't know it, but she's really in danger. And I want her flown here and given rooms here as long as she wants to be here. She said if she could afford the rent, she would come back to New York. New York is her home. She was born in Queens, New York, and raised in Queens, New York, and in Manhattan. So New York is her home, and so she has paid her dues being poor and sacrificing her comforts to help, drug addicts and people like that. Okay, so I think I made the point, right? I tried to show you that St. Francis was an amazingly good person who suffered as though he was the crucified Christ. And she's suffering still, and I want it to end. She's suffered enough. It's time for her start to reap some rewards. She is supposed to be, Will Smith is supposed to be, he's John Hancock, the founding father. He's also the prophet Elijah, and St. Thomas Aquinas, and Cicero the orator. And he is supposed to be president of the United States, and she's supposed to be the first lady of the United States, because they were brother and sister in the garden, and they were married and in love, and they are still in love. Their love never ended, although it's buried, so they're not aware of their love because so much lifetimes is on top of it. But with a little meditation and psychotherapy, they will remember their love for each other and their love for God, and be able to serve this world, this country, better than any president, or, better than certainly the senile president that's in office now, making a mockery of leadership, because he's a puppet. Alright, so that's what I want to tell you about St. Francis of Assisi. She deserves a PhD, and she deserves a home here in the St. Francis of Assisi Residence 3 in Chelsea, Manhattan, New York. Alright, thank you for your attention. I appreciate your prayers.